Civilization advances when you have less power in government. The more power you have in government, the more they resort to the ancient tradition of the warrior spirit. The warrior spirit where everything is gained by going out and robbing and killing and plundering. And today it's a little bit different. They plunder through inflating the currency and taxation, but it's still plundering, but it's power in the hands of government. We had an example, a beautiful example of minimal power in our government, and then we had maximum productivity and maximum wealth. But today we think too much of the wealth and believe that government provides this, rather than understanding that wealth and prosperity comes from freedom and productivity and not from the government. One other thing that we have done to help contribute to the loss of our republic has been this notion that we should give up some of our liberties to be safe and secure. There is absolutely never a reason to give up 1 ounce of freedom for the sake of security. It won't work. Besides our flawed foreign policy, there were a few other problems that contributed to 9/11. One was our lack of clear understanding of how the Second Amendment is supposed to work. And once again, even before 9/11, it was assumed the government would take care of us and be safe. They were in charge of airport security, and they after some hijacking in the 70s, that we were all taught, one thing you never do is resist anybody that wants to take over an airplane, and certainly the airlines wouldn't be allowed to have guns on the airplane. That would be terrible. But we have companies in this country still today. These companies are armored cars, and they carry money around, and they have guns, and they do a pretty good job protecting their cargo. But we were handicapped in this country because we were dependent on the government, and our cargo, our passengers, weren't protected as they should have been. They say that, no, they're too dangerous, but can you imagine what 4 airplanes involved? Maybe 4 guns, or just the knowledge that the guns were there might have prevented the whole thing. There have been some serious consequences of our lack of respect and our loss of liberty and lack of concern and defense of our republic, and we're suffering the consequences. This is what we're talking about. How can we reverse this trend? I think we have to understand how it happened, what the problems were, and what we have to aim for. But we've had a lot of problems because of this. Number one, economic problems, because they do not understand the Constitution and economics on monetaries. I mean, it is very clear what we should be doing. The founders knew and understood something about inflation. The runaway inflation of the continental dollar was devastating to the economy, so they were explicit. They said no emitting of bills of credit, no printing money, no paper money, and that only gold and silver should be legal tender. Not yet. Continuous legal yet. Now it comes. There is no authority in the Constitution authorizing a central bank, which means there should be no Federal Reserve System. As a consequence of our lack of concern for the protection of liberties, we have suffered tremendously from this. We don't have privacy anymore. We pass bills like the Patriot Act and the FISA legislation, and the Military Commissions Act. No Military Commissions Act. We need to defend habeas corpus. Drugs are very dangerous. I think illegal drugs, the ones that are currently illegal, are very, very dangerous, and we should be very cautious about it. But I also, as a physician, recognize of the great danger of prescription drugs. What about the government mandating mental health testing for all our school kids? And when they run these pilot programs, they find that 10% of our students really need help with these psychotropic drugs. That's the kind of drug regulation that we need. We need to stop that. But there are restrictions and restraints, and it just goes on and on. concession that we need a little bit of government or a little bit of welfare. I've heard so many times over the years that, yes, I'm opposed to this welfare system, I'm opposed to this, unless you need it. But if you concede it and say, well, there's only a few people that need it, and there has to be a safety net. The problem with that argument is you assume it's going to be a small percentage of people that are going to get the help, but you've conceded 100% of the principle. And then what happens is if there's something that comes for free, you subsidize something, you get more of it, and it leads to the devastating complications of what a welfare society comes to. But not only that, is so often the good motivations, the moral high ground that the other side so often have, is doesn't work out. It doesn't really help those people, whether it's domestic welfare or national and foreign welfare. What it generally helps are the people who are in power and in control of the corporations. If you have a housing program, and we've just witnessed what happens when the government gets involved in directing housing money and the malinvestment through the Federal Reserve. So what they do is they end up doing the same thing over and over again, and what we need to do is break up this cycle and say that we have to stop this, because if not, it'll bankrupt and destroy our country and destroy our liberties. There's one issue that frequently I barely mention, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more tonight. And that is the bum rap we get who believe in freedom that we don't care about the environment. That is just not true. The environment, if you think about it, has been damaged very often by bad federal government regulations. The dependency on government to build our rivers and our dams and our levees and say that government will take care of us, and they build them in the wrong places and we have these consequences. But the environment can be protected by the marketplace and strict adherence to property rights. People do not... None of us have a right to pollute our neighbor's property. We don't have a right to pollute their property, their air, or their water. A strict adherence would protect the environment. In welfare, the corporations benefit, and some of the rules and regulations in the environment, certain corporations benefit by that as well. Somebody abuses the system. That's why government should be very minimal in protecting liberty. It's like being liberty license. It means that you have a right to your own life, but you don't have a right to do any harm to your neighbors or another person. That is the one limitation that we have. Whether I believe is coming as a consequence of the campaign. The campaign in the primary has been transitioned to the Campaign for Liberty, and now we've had a grand 3 days, and we're climaxing that campaign right now. And there's every reason in the world for us to be energized. It has been phenomenal. And can you imagine going from those 12 spammers we had at the beginning to what we have here tonight? Once again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me, but more so, the trust that you have placed in the concept of our God-given rights to our life and our liberty. Thank you very much.